Hey folks, I'm totally not named Dan, though you can call me that if you want, and today I'm back with another deck profile video for you, but this time, it's not my deck, it's not my winning deck, it's a winning deck of a friend of mine. So let me bring in my buddy, Yuna the Sheep, and it can tell you a little bit about what we've got here today.
Hi, thanks for having me on here with you. And yeah, this is a deck that I have mixed feelings about because of the circumstance of it winning and such. But it did manage to work in the end, so here I am to show you this.
Yeah, and we'll switch on over to the deck view to talk about exactly what it is we have going on today. So, as you can probably tell, this is not a deck that I made. My decks don't have anywhere near this number of 2s and 3s normally. But this is
Yeah.
Yuna's Snipe deck.
Yes, Snipe.
Yes, Snipe. So this deck was originally designed around Magne, and it was played with Magne, but it had to be registered as Snipe, because as it turns out, Magne is not on the roster of characters. Or at least was not on until the Set 4 DLC came out.
Yeah, so we had to pick a random chaos character because that's the symbol the deck is run on to use instead, and we kind of just randomly decided on Snipe for it.
Yeah. So this deck is a mess in that regard, and if you ask me, it's a mess in a lot of other regards. I'm pretty sure you agree too.
Yeah, I was not expecting to do too well with this actual list. And as soon as I got home for the event, I did change things up because I wasn't sure how I fully wanted to build it, but this all seemed fairly okay to things. So I was just going to kind of throw it all together and see what worked best, what didn't work, and change it from there.
Yeah, exactly. It's how you learn. It's like how I built my Deku deck, but it's also how you end up winning with an absolute pile of God knows what that doesn't really synergize.
Yeah, this was kind of just me going, right, all these cards say stuff to do with momentum, and they starting up speed, so I'll just throw them all together, and then it just ratios that way. But
I mean,
then
most
the
of them
pile
don't
was...
even care about your momentum, to be honest. Electric Jolt cares about being in momentum, but it doesn't really care about you having momentum.
Yeah, well, it's more so like that, and then
And then I think Home Run Comet is your only other attack that really cares about it.
Yeah, true. Granted, there is a couple things with like powerful in the X in here. That's why I
Yeah,
kind of
okay,
wanted to
this
have a bunch of
Twin Flame
momentum.
Scourge has that, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of uses for your momentum, whereas you have Electric Surge generates you extra, you have Home Run Comet generates the momentum that it itself needs, Electric Jolt is guaranteed momentum, Charged Up gives you momentum when your charged or stun attack does damage, which is most of your attacks.
Yeah.
Helping Tomura is extra momentum, it's basically just Wealthy Aspirations, but on a slightly lower difficulty, but it costs itself from stage.
Yeah.
Personally, I would be running Wealthy Aspirations over it, because Wealthy Aspirations is, if anything, a better foundation. Sure, it's a 2-diff, but it's a 2-diff that doesn't then cost you a foundation to use. It just becomes a face down.
Yeah, and to be honest, I used it once, the entire thing, and I didn't really need it there in momentum. It was just a case of, oh, I might as well have another one. With things like the Battle Arena, which was I didn't think I would super love Battle Arena, but it was honestly one of my favorite cards of the list.
Battle Arena gives you extra momentum. It also gives your opponent extra momentum, so be careful with that.
Yeah, it can be double-edged, but that's why obviously we have quite a few high difficulty attacks in this deck.
And then Cremation's just free momentum. It's a free trigger for your Helping Tomura or your Wealthy Aspirations, which is all well and good if you need 2 momentum, but you don't really, except for expanding capacity. Which I will admit is great, because it's +3/+3, and that +3 speed really pushes things through.
Yeah, and it was quite useful, especially because of like the electric jolts and the surges having the stun. It meant that when I used it on, say, the second or third attack, it was nigh unblockable.
Generally, I find it's nigh unblockable even on the first.
True, but when you're doing that on, say, a third attack home run comet, where you just throw all your momentum at them as well with the powerful, it just means you're guaranteed to kill, which is basically how the deck worked, was just hit them with one attack that dealt a big amount of damage, and then like things like electric jolt and such just Then little pokes.
Yeah,
For a
Electric
turn
Jolt
or two.
is great for you because it's also basically stunned from momentum.
Yeah,
So
which
I can
did
see
come
why
on.
that's a goodie.
Yeah, Electric Jolt. And then a lot of my decks I seem to be playing is just still one of the most amazing attacks that there is generically.
Yeah. I mean, it's always a poke, it's always a momentum, it's always a stun one now and a stun one later.
Yeah, why wouldn't I run Electric Jolt if it's on the symbol, of course?
And in that way, Electric Jolt almost combos with your response, because your response increases your opponent's progressive difficulty, which it's not stun, but over the course of a turn will amount to stun. So those two sort of go together.
And if they don't decide to block it, it
Yeah,
gets an immediate +1/+1.
Jolt becomes a 4/5, but I mean, that's basically all your character does for this deck, though. It interacts with Jolt, and otherwise it's just +1/+1.
Looking back, it'd probably be just as good if I was, say, playing any of the Ochikos or Denki, because they arguably do more with what the deck's trying to do, being mess around with momentum and having that there.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you want to go all in on this crazy momentum strategy, Home Run Comet may well be the way to go in Denki. That's my main issue with this deck, is the character just doesn't do that much for it.
Yeah, I have been thinking of doing that, and just to see if I just change nothing about it, if it can just have almost the same amount of success as another character. I feel like it honestly could. I wish Magne did more herself.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really. I'm glad that she was actually put into this game, which I was surprised at in general, because she doesn't show up much.
Oh, likewise. I was surprised by the Wild Wild Pussycats DLC, but happy that we got that little bit of trans rep there. I was not expecting to get more come set 4.
I was just happy with Tiger being in, and then, Magne came out. Of course, I was going to build Magne because I wanted to build the other trans character. And you know how much I've played and messed around with Tiger, but just not very interested in the other character. They're just a +1/+1, and then a -1/-1 to hopefully your opponent having odd.
Yeah, so you really need some ways to lower your opponent's damage by an odd number so that you can just guarantee that you get that -1/-1. But there aren't really very many ways to do it in Chaos. The only one I've seen is all worked up when you discard a card.
And to do that, you have to use One with Nature for, because that's the only card in Symbol that actually discards a card for a cost, so you can just discard all worked up. Normally they discard themselves for it.
Well, I mean, the thing with One with Nature is it gives +2 to your opponent's block modifier to block the attack, right? It doesn't care whose attack it is. So your opponent just gets +2 to their block modifier to block their own attack, and basically a none effect. It's not going to up your block modifier, it's going to up theirs. So you're still fine to block it, but you are still using 2 cards to do the thing, so
and that's not just ideal. To give it -1 damage, which,
however,
a lot of other symbols just have a lot more easier time to do that.
Yeah. However, -1 damage after training with Gunhead is incredible. Because you -1 damage after you've set it to 2. Then you -1 again with your character. Really works quite nicely. But at the same time, I might consider maybe going for Order with this character.
I have been thinking about going with Order. I would need to think of a deck list for it. Yeah. But my main character play, being Tiger, is played on Order, so I wanted to try a different symbol. And Chaos just seemed like it was strong enough on its own that I didn't really need to do too much to it with Magne.
Yeah, but then you get to the point where you're playing the deck and you don't really need Magne there, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. So I'm going to probably try them again with some other symbols or cards and such, because I want to try and make them the best they can be, even if they're kind of generic with what they do.
Personally, I think the Denki stuff's real nice for you, specifically because it forces Electric Jolt into momentum, and then Electric Jolt interacts with the fact that they've got plus progressive difficulty.
Yeah, and again, it's Chaos Order, so the Denki stuff can go into an Order deck.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm thinking Order's the way to go. It's also worth noting with Denki stuff. This is a 3/4, right?
Yeah.
With your character's effect, it's a 4/5. And then you've got the progressive card pool bonus there with the once per turn response. That means that with all of that, it's basically a 5 before your opponent's block modifier. So they're not going to block an Electric Jolt without committing something.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to take that 5. And let's say they do block it. You've still stunned them 1, you've forced them to commit stuff for the electric jolt, and they still take 1. And you still get the momentum to make them commit 1 again next turn.
Yeah, it's just a really strong combo electric jolt with Magne, which I do like. And it was kind of, I wanted to look at electric jolt and Magne, what worked with these two that was on chaos, because I wanted to not build order.
It's basically the only thing that works with Magne as far as I can tell.
Yeah, the rest is just kind of chaos good stuff, as in one with nature, Pillar Swing, Home Run Comet.
Helping Tomura.
Helping Tomura is something I'm likely going to cut because I didn't really need it. And you still want to keep the foundation more often. There's sometimes where I just wouldn't use Helping Tomura because the one foundation it was more useful to me than one more momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I already had enough. And there's no point in having 20 momentum if you can't play the attacks that use your momentum.
Yeah.
And that's all the momentum was for powerful on Twist and Flame and Home Run Comet.
You don't need the insane momentum generation in this deck.
I didn't even think about it for a while. But yeah, probably Wealth Aspiration is the better card to play there.
I will say you probably want a 4th Cremation because Cremation is incredible.
Oh yeah, Cremation was... It was a card I thought it was probably going to be good, but I didn't want to max out on it because I feel like it could have not worked. But again, it's just so good. It's like a Ready Get Set Go for this deck.
I mean, it doesn't do what Ready Get Set Go does, but what it does do is it gives you plus speed and it gives you plus 3 speed, which is a fair amount. So it forces through your attacks. Any big attack you need to force through, it's there. And also, it gives you free momentum. It sets up your big attacks.
Yeah.
You probably don't want too many of it, because it is a hard OPG, which is not a thing we see a lot in this game. But the thing about that is it's also a good high block. It's also a great enhance. So worst comes to the worst, you block with it, you review it, you keep it for next turn, and you use it to force an attack through.
Yeah, it's like, I think my third game, it was just, I was keeping count of like how many cards they had, what their check was, and then just because of the Cremation, it made my Home Run Comet impossible for them to block. And because it was the 3rd or 4th turn, they only had about 15 or so health, and powerful for like 5 momentum just meant this is going to kill you.
That's all you need, Basic Training is not a good card. People keep telling me it's ban-worthy because the deadlock response is so good. But to that, I'm just like, why are you going into deadlock, you fools?
It's a win more effect. You shouldn't ban a card off of a deadlock response.
I disagree with it being considered a win more. If your opponent goes to deadlock, you're clearly not winning if you've let them go that far. If your opponent's going into deadlock, it's because the game has gone A, too long, and B, not shown them enough reasons not to. Yes, Basic Training is a reason not to, but you should not be going into deadlock anyway. If your opponent is going into deadlock, you have done something wrong, or your opponent is a complete idiot.
I'm just playing it because it is a 0 difficulty, and I'm wanting to play 3-4 attacks a turn. I'm going to need to have a fair few foundations down, so...
Yeah, what I'm saying here
with that.
Is it's 0 difficulty plus 1 damage once per turn. It's nothing in any other character. In Magne, the important thing is that changes you from an odd to an even, potentially. Meaning that your double jab pummel here gets to be a 6, gets to benefit from the character effect, gets to become a 4/7.
Yeah.
That is why it's good in Magne and basically nobody else.
It was fine. It was good when it worked, but I'd much rather have my other 0 diffs. I more wanted either excited or requesting assistance. So
+1 speed is nice with easily excited, but it is just a +1 speed once per turn, and you don't want changing your speed anywhere near as much as you want changing your damage, because changing your damage facilitates your character.
Yeah.
So I would argue that you probably want less of the easily excited, more of the basic training. Or the alternative is you go more of both and you take out the helping Tomura.
Well, that's some I already kind of took out in my new one for the all worked up, being the helping Tomura and the other card from the All for One starter deck.
Oh, the Mastermind Revealed or whatever it is.
Yeah, I never really used its effect. It was kind of just there as it could have been blank and it would have done the same in my matches.
Yeah. So the other
Because I'm
thing
someone
is,
who naturally keeps track of my own momentum anyway, so my face downs have either alleged ults that I flipped or I know what attack I played or not. And the flip for the block is nice and all, but it's just it's situational plus free speed basically.
yeah. So helping Tomura, the issue I see with it is it's a forecheck. And
Yeah,
forecheck foundations, if you have too many of them, will mess you up. So that's another reason why I think the Wealthy Aspirations at a 2-5 is better. Yes, the 2 looks worse on face, but again, you're not losing the foundation when you use it. So it's
yeah,
arguably actually a better option.
yeah. It's like if I might put two of that in.
So yeah, that's what's in here, I guess. And yeah, your strategy is just build up big momentum and home run Comet, right?
Yeah, but weirdly enough, being a forward, I barely saw it that often. I won more games with the Twin Flame.
Huh. So what's this Twin Flame do? Actions don't count
Um,
towards progressive. That's pretty cool, because that
well,
means
that's
if
if
you've
you're
used...
Derby only,
Oh, okay,
sadly.
yeah. Yeah, so it would help with the cremations if you were Dabby, but because you're not, it doesn't.
But look at the top two cards of your deck. Add one of them to your hand and remove the other. So you're gonna basically pick one of your top two cards up,
Yep. If
and
you're
then if you
running
do,
that, I'm wondering, should you be running one of the other cards that goes with Shigaraki and All for One? Polite and Well Spoken is a fantastic card. Anytime you're choosing to remove stuff like you are with Twin Flame Scourge, if you put it there, that's then a foundation you can play without expending a card from your hand. It's basically a free foundation.
yeah, it probably would be a two up because you will like basically grab those two cards only. It's not a keep one, remove a card in hand. It has to be that other card, or it may have been better at say 3 or 4.
Thing is, though, you're running Helping Tomorrow already. That's a lot of the time proven to be basically just a blank 1-4. Why
Yeah,
not have a blank 1-6 instead? That
I didn't
sometimes
realize
you
it
can play
was
from
a six,
RFG.
which will help because obviously if I do check the Twin Flame, that's a two, so it'd be nice to have some tick checks in there.
So 6s don't balance out 2s, they just make a higher variance, but at the same time, being able to naturally check your pillar swing or
Yeah,
naturally check your third attack is actually really quite useful. And it will mess people up when you just randomly block on a 6 and don't have to commit anything.
yeah, all worked up in probably that card. It probably what's going to be in the new version of this.
So yeah, there is potential here. I don't personally think Chaos is doing you all that much good. I feel like the deck you've built would work just as well with somebody else, if not better.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to even argue against you because I was having the same thoughts while building this, but it was a case of I wanted to play Magne. I had basically everything, or I could borrow and use the stuff. I wanted to play her as soon as I can because I wanted a break from playing Tiger for so long.
Yeah, and I went out of my way to find a promo so that you could play this character because I quite wanted this
Yeah,
character to see play. I wanted to see what you did with her because she's
yeah,
cool. I really like that she's in the game, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, Jasco went really hard with that background. It looks pretty good here. It looks amazing in foil.
yeah. Which I cranked up to 11 with a shadow foil sleeve as well.
Yeah. A set of random K-pop sleeves that Cutest bought a while back.
Yeah,
I have no idea why they call them K-pop, but it's funny and it makes
yeah,
them super shiny.
yeah. We were one person saying that it almost was like you have to put a seizure warning on my
Yeah.
copy of Manga from all the shine.
Well, the fact that it's blue and red as well, like that one Pokemon episode, is
Yeah,
not good. I would put up a
yeah,
clip of the Pokemon episode, but I feel like even if I used the censored version where they reduced the frame rate and made it actually safe for public viewing, it would probably still get a lot of complaints.
yeah. It's like it may not cause seizure anymore, but it definitely still will hurt your eyes.
No, it's really not that bad, the fixed version, but at the same time,
Nah.
it has such a reputation that,
Yeah,
you know, even in the fixed version, people will hate you for it.
yeah. Everyone knows what you talk about when you say the banned Pokemon, so that's all you really need to do.
Yeah, which is weird because there are in fact free banned episodes from the first generation. That's only one of them, and actually, you mentioned the banned Pokemon episode. That's not the one people think of.
Oh yeah. Well,
A
if you say the
lot of
banned
people
Pokemon,
think about the
they
swimsuit competition episode.
yes, good old James with those inflatable boobs.
Yeah, I really need to watch that one sometime.
That's what I don't believe that was why it was banned though. That's a weird thing
No,
about it.
it was banned specifically because James set unrealistic standards for female beauty. That's the best part of it.
I thought it was because isn't it the one also where someone just has a gun?
No, that's a
and
completely
points
separate episode. That's the
Oh,
third banned episode.
I thought that was the same episode, and the one was banned for someone else.
So the worst part about the banned for a gun episode is that's the Safari Zone episode where they have this running gag that anytime Ash throws one of his 40 Pokeballs, a Taurus jumps in front of it and gets captured.
Yeah.
So later on, they have callbacks to that with Professor Oak in his lab being trampled by 40 Taurus.
Yeah.
And they left that in.
And they call it back in other season as well, because they'll go and talk to Professor Oak and they'll be...
Wait, after Gen 1, they still call back to that banned episode? I thought it was bad enough that they were doing it in Gen 1.
They'll show like all of Ash's Pokemon that Oak has, and there'll just be a horde of Taurus there.
I can't believe they're still referring back to that, and yet they've only just started talking about Porygon again. They've only just won the battle to finally get use of Kadabra in the Pokemon card game again. It's wild.
Yeah.
But enough of Pokemon for now. Yeah, we're talking about this, we're talking about Magne, and I really appreciate you making this deck. I really appreciate the fact that you broke the system with this deck. I had no idea that they hadn't put Magne on there. I genuinely think that's really bad of them, and I genuinely think it's really bad of them that they clearly didn't pay attention to the card text either. Because if you look at these abilities, there are no colons in either of the enhances, which means, as written, they are 100% cost.
Yep, so you can't respond to it.
Yep. Now, they have fixed that with Errata, but just... it feels like they didn't care about the character with that, and with the fact that she's not on the system. But at the same time, that's really odd, because this was a character they didn't have to care about. There was no reason that they needed to print this character. So the fact that they chose to print this character and chose to give her the best background ever, and yet then didn't really pay attention to her abilities or putting her on the system.
Yeah, and it's not like it was like the week she was legal either. It was a good 3-4 weeks after.
Yeah.
I wouldn't understand if it was day of and she wasn't there. But this was like almost a month afterwards.
It's weird. On the one hand, this is the only character they left out. It looks a lot like trans erasure. On the other hand, it's active trans inclusion that they didn't have to go out of their way to do in the first place. And visually, it is done incredibly well. So they clearly put effort in there. So it's just, we have both extremes, and I don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah, because like with Tiger, it would be weird for them to leave Tiger out when they did the whole WoW Pussycats DLC. But like Magne, even I was surprised who's one of the people who really likes Magne as a character. Was like, I would not be surprised if she wasn't in the game at all, because she's not in much. Like,
no, she's in like 2 episodes tops.
I think the most important thing she does is, I don't want to say because it's technically spoilers, but
yeah, but the fight with Tiger, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Even the Wild Wild Pussycats DLC, they had no need to print the Wild Wild Pussycats. They went out of their way for a jokey DLC that had some really wacky, over-the-top abilities and some really cool stuff in it. And I'll link you to my reaction to that down below, because that was a great pack.
Yeah, well, hell, look at Player Body and from there.
Yeah, so Player Body went in my Moneta deck because it was a fantastic card. And it goes in Tiger, definitely. It's one of the few 3-ofs I want to run 4 copies of in everything.
Yeah, it's just so good, and like, it's the point where like, oh no, not Player Body again. When I'm playing it because it's just that strong, and they're like, oh, this is not. I need to get rid of it. It's 5-hander on symbol. There's like hard argue to not run it because it just free speed and potential disruption to their card pool.
And I mean, you say 5-hander. Tiger is not a 5-hander.
No.
Tiger is pretty much an infinity hander as long as you can keep throwing attacks.
I'm gonna say it's been very rare where I've actually ended on like less than 5 cards in hand. with Tiger.
Anyway, are there any other changes to this deck you were wanting to talk about?
Not really. Obviously, the all work tough is the main one because we need some minus damage.
Yeah.
And then just some other things which you pointed out with like the Twin Flame Witch. Making that be a stronger card.
If the
And
Twin
adding a
Flame's
6
doing you
check.
good, there's no reason not to run more of it as well.
Yeah.
If that's your backup win con.
Yeah, it was probably one of the strongest cards I used. That Cremation was 2 of the strongest cards I played in the deck. So definitely bump Cremation up to a 4 and maybe 3 copies of Twin Flame, because you still don't want to see it all the time with being a 2 check, but the extra copy won't hurt at all.
So I disagree with you there. I would say if you're running the 2 checks, might as well get the absolute most out of running the 2 checks. Because the difference between running 1 2 check in your deck and not being able to guarantee that you can pass a 3 diff, and running no 2 checks and being able to guarantee that, is a far bigger difference than the difference between running 1 2 check and running 4 2 checks, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm gonna say I'm not too familiar with the 2 check master things, because this is the first deck I've built and played that has actually had a 2 check. So if everybody's caught me off playing the deck for the first time, because I had not really tested this at all. So when it happened, I thought, oh god, I forgot that I had a 2 check in it, because I'm so used to Mirror and Tiger where I played not having any 2 checks at all. So when it got to my second card, I was like, oh, on a free go through, and then it was a 2, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Is it end of my turn?
That's an issue. But I would like to point out that the other thing is, if you look at this card, it looks at the top 2 cards of your deck. You pick one of them and you get rid of the other one of them, right? So it sort of lets you pick and choose whether or not you keep that 2 check.
Yeah, and it makes you almost could be like a 6.5-hander if you're playing this attack.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting that 7th card, but you're picking which of 2 cards is the better one for your hand.
I mean, you say that. You're a 6-hander to start with, so it's more like you're a 7.5.
I'm just so God, I'm so used to playing 5-handers.
Yeah. Anyway.
It'd be fun it'd be fun being able to talk about this deck, which had surprisingly a good thing for a deck that was very much through together, and happy to show it to people.
Yeah, I mean,
this is chaos around it.
As said, absolutely a pile. But yeah, it's on chaos, it's caused chaos, and it's actually done quite well. Despite being a complete just pile of vaguely synergistic cards at that.
And the whole day at locals was chaotic as well, so...
Okay, yeah, we did have a fire alarm in the middle of it, all sorts of other weirdness going on.
Yeah, so chaos really encapsulates this entire deck.
Yeah.
The way it was made, the symbol of the deck, and just the day it won, so... Happy to show it off.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me for this, and we'll catch you again next time. Bye.
See ya.